Hello, coming to you from an undisclosed location. It's been a while, but what I've been doing is I usually use these videos for my Patreon page, and I've been spending time getting that in order, the Connerson Center in order, and creating ads for it for my social media, and starting to do videos for my blogger to explain what I'm doing with the Connerson Center. So everything's trying to go to the Connerson Center and to my platforms, trying to survive. Um, No stable housing yet, but we'll see what happens. New York City is right. Uh, is opening back up. We'll talk about that in another time. Or listen to my podcast on Anchor, and you'll hear about that. We're going to be reading from the Utopia of Rules, David Graeber. I'm doing a course on his book, Bullshit Jobs. And I saw this book and said, this would be good to just read to you all. Dead Zones of Imagination, an essay on structural stupidity. Let me begin with a story about bureaucracy. In 2006, my mother had a series of strokes, and it soon became obvious that she would eventually be incapable of living at home without assistance. Since her insurance would not cover home care, a series of social workers advised us to put in for Medicaid. To qualify for Medicaid, however, one's total worth can only amount to $6,000. We arranged to transfer her savings. This was, I suppose, technically a scam, though it's a peculiar sort of scam since the government employs thousands of social workers whose main work seems to involve telling citizens exactly how to perpetuate said scam. But shortly thereafter, she had another very serious stroke and found herself in a nursing home undergoing long-term rehabilitation. If you hear noise, that's a facility across the street. I think it's an old folks home, kind of, maybe rehab, kind of something. Where was I? Okay. When she emerged from that, she was definitely going to need home care, but there was a problem. Her social security check was being deposited directly, and she was barely able to sign her name. So unless I acquired power of attorney over her account and was thus able to pay her monthly rent bills for her, the money would immediately build up and disqualify her. Even after I filled out the enormous raft of Medicaid documents I needed to file to qualify her for pending status, I went to her bank, picked up the requisite forms, and brought them to the nursing home. The documents needed to be notarized. The nurse on the floor informed me there was an in-house notary, but I needed to make an appointment. She picked up the phone and put me through to a disembodied voice. Who then transferred me to the notary. The notary proceeded to inform me I had to get authorization from the head of social work, and hung up. So I acquired his name and room number and duly took the elevator downstairs and appeared at his office, only to discover that the head of social work was in fact the disembodied voice that had referred me to the notary in the first place. I've been in this situation. The head of social work picked up the phone, said, "Marjorie, that was me. You're driving this man crazy with this nonsense, and you're driving me crazy too." And after a small apologetic gesture, proceeded to secure me an appointment for early the next week. The next week, the notary duly appeared, accompanied me upstairs, made sure I'd fill out my side of the form, as had been repeatedly emphasized to me, and then in my mother's presence, proceeded to fill out her own. I was a little puzzled that she didn't ask my mother to sign anything, only me, but I figured that she knew what she was doing. The next day I took the document to the bank, where the woman at the desk took one look, asked why my mother hadn't signed it, and showed it to her manager, who told me to take it back and do it right. It seemed that the notary indeed had no idea what she was doing. So I got new set of forms, filled out my side of each, and made a new appointment. On the appointment day, the notary appeared, and after a few awkward remarks about how difficult these banks are, why does each bank insist on having its own completely different power of attorney form? She took me upstairs. I signed. My mother signed with some difficulty. She was finding it hard at this point even to prop herself up. And the next day I returned to the bank. Another woman at a different desk examined the forms and asked why I had signed the line where it said to write my name and printed my name on the line where it said to sign. I just did exactly what the notary told me to do. But it clearly says signature here. Oh, yes, it does, doesn't it? I guess she told me wrong. Again, all the information is still there, isn't it? It's just those two bits that are reversed. So is that really a problem? The situation is kind of pressing, and I'd really rather not have to wait to make another appointment. Well, normally we don't even accept these forms without all the signatories being here in person. My mother had a stroke. She's bedridden. That's why I need power of attorney in the first place. She said she checked with the manager and after 10 minutes returned, the manager hanging just within earshot in the background to announce the bank could not accept the forms in their present state. And in addition, even if they were filled out correctly, I would still need a letter from my mother's doctor certifying that she was mentally competent to sign such a document. I pointed out that no one had mentioned any such letter previously. What? The manager suddenly interjected. Who gave you those forms and didn't tell you about the letter? Since the culprit was one of the more sympathetic bank employees, I dodged the question, noting instead that in the bank book it was printed quite clearly, in trust for David Graeber. He of course replied, that would only matter if she was dead. We'll read some more tomorrow, and I think a lot of us have been in that situation. Uh, until next time, I'm happy to be making videos again. I should be able to do it for the next 30 days. Then I don't know what. Um, stay safe, stay sane.